Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking about how teams managing Dynamics 365 finance and supply chain management solutions can take better control of system performance. One of the common challenges of improving performance is connecting technical signals to business activity. That's according to my guest on this episode, Pavel Wozniak of XPLUS. XPLUS is the sponsor of this episode, and Pavel joins me to provide an alternative perspective on what a structured performance optimization cycle actually looks like, taking us from the early signals to measuring the outcome of changes. We discuss some of the challenges around investigating performance issues, the tools that help, both out of the box from Microsoft and specialized tools like those from XPLUS, and the real conditions that add complexity to the overall performance management landscape for F&SCM, like OneVersion and partner solutions. Okay, well, Pavel, thank you so much for being here today. Can we maybe start with just a bit of an introduction of who you are and your work?
Sure. Thanks, Jason. So my name is Pavel Wozniak. I work for XPLUS Global Company. Yeah, I work here for a pretty long time. It's almost 9 years now. So my roles were always involved with testing. So I was the QA specialist, test manager, and right now I'm on the pre-sales and onboarding manager position. So I'm responsible for delivery of our products to end customers with all the steps, like from installation up to onboarding. So yeah, that's my role now.
Yeah, we really wanted to dive into some of the typical and maybe most relevant performance questions that I know that you get a lot of from your customers and that often cause concerns, questions in the field today from real customers running Dynamics 365 solutions. We hear this too, that systems will become slow, D365 finance and supply chain, and they have no idea where to start, right? They are trying to investigate how common is this problem and what usually happens when a company tries to investigate performance problems with the tools that they're maybe starting with or without the right tools.
This is very, very common situation. Yeah, customers, they come to us and they say, we think our system slowed down or the performance is not that great. So the problem starts at the first point because a problem is usually reported by the users. The report is very subjective to them. So they tell us that they feel the system is running slow, but this won't give us the root cause of the issue. So we don't even know where to look, what we should check. So without right monitoring, teams usually start with investigating the fragments. So one person will check the SQL database, another one will check AOSs, somebody will look at the batch history, LCS or standard telemetry. But each source gives us the part of the picture, right? So it is not fully correlated in between. So we don't know in this situation, when AOS was slowing down, we don't know if any batch job was the cause of it, or maybe some heavy user activity was the cause of it. So what usually is missing is the correlation between all the metrics. So the investigation often becomes reactive. Teams compare timestamps manually, look for obvious things like spikes, restarts, services, or if they just wait until the issue happen again and then try to start investigations. So yeah, the biggest problem is that we look at the thing separately in silos. So of course the cause is time. Yeah. So even if we know where the performance issue is, we may not be able to quickly answer what was the root cause. If it was the SQL pressure, maybe the long running queries, maybe a log, batch bottleneck. So this is what usually missing without tools like that. And this is exactly what performance monitoring is designed to fill. Yeah, because it continuously collects real-time data from all the layers, from SQL, AOS, and batch. So then we can present all those metrics on a single dashboard and correlate different metrics together on single dashboard. So this is usually what the process looks like.
Yeah, and maybe just to put more of a point on it, Microsoft provides LCS and they provide application insights, and customers maybe think that is sufficient, but that's, like you're saying, that's maybe one of the first mistakes that they're making. Can you walk us through what performance monitoring collects and what the picture looks like in practice when someone's using it?
Yeah, so usually the situation is that customers use LCS and application insights. So without monitor, they can use only those two tools. And the gap here is that standard Microsoft tools, they do not correlate the data. Yeah? So the SQL, AOS, and Batch are in different tools and the data is not correlated. So what our monitor collects and what is different? Yeah. So on the SQL side, we collect data such as active queries, long queries, frequently executed queries, logs, transactions, in and out transactions, query store insights, and table graphs. Yeah, so we can see also how different tables, they change in time, how the data is increasing in our tables. So on this layer, this helps us to see whether the database is under pressure or whether there are specific queries that are consuming resources, whether there is a user or maybe process that is blocking other users or some operations in the system. So on this SQL side, these are the things that we collect. On the AOS side, we look at the server load. So here we can measure CPU usage, memory, active sessions on the AOS, restarts, and other operational indicators. This tells us whether the application layer is stable or whether the user activities or server utilization correlates with the slowdown that we registered or noticed on the environment. And the last layer, last piece that we measure is the batch side. Here we monitor workload and behavior of background processes. This is critical because most of the D365 performance problems, they are not on the single layer. This is usually the interaction between users, batch jobs, integrations, and SQL activity. So that's why this is that critical that we collect all those three layers. Because in practice, this gives us time-based view of the environment. So for example, we can use the report. We can say that the report generating was slowed, let's say at 10 a.m. up to 10:30. Yeah? So if we know that the time period, we can filter out that exact window and compare all those three layers together and see what is the correlation between them.
That's really interesting. I mean, and I think it shows how complex the picture can be and how many elements need to be considered at the same time. One of the areas where I know performance often becomes a problem is related to Microsoft One version updates or other kinds of deployments that partners might do. How does your solution deal with those kinds of issues that arise?
This is very common for users to say that system feels slower after the update. And this is usually the only info that we have. So performance monitor can turn this kind of issue raised by the users with the numbers, with the measurements. So what we usually do, we collect the baseline before the change and compare it to behavior after the change. So we can measure how our metrics of performance looked like before one version update and compare it to what happened after the update. So instead of just asking ourselves if system is really slower, we can show what really changed. Maybe a query started running longer. Maybe a batch job now takes twice as long as it used to be. Or maybe there are some blocked queries in the database. So this gives teams the evidence that they can use for Microsoft, implementation partners, or the internal teams. And it also helps us to verify any corrective actions that we've taken. So the same way, if we introduce some changes that should fix the performance, with performance monitoring, which works 24/7 and collects all the data, we can also do this kind of comparison before fix and after the fix. So usually this is based on the analysis before and after.
Yeah, I mean, it's providing the kind of evidence and visibility that would just seems like it would be really hard to compile in any other way, really. And I want to also tie this back to business processes because obviously this performance doesn't sort of exist in a system vacuum. It's all tied to specific business processes. Can you tie real world customer metrics to technical performance?
Of course, we can do that. A typical example is the order processing or integration through outputs. These are the most common. So let's say customer imports sales orders from external system into D365. Standard metrics, they may look fine, but the business sees that the orders are not being processed quickly enough. So with our custom metrics, we can create a SQL script that checks. For example, how many orders were created, how many orders were processed, how many orders were posted or left with error. Yeah, in let's say last hour, last 15 minutes, whatever the interval. But yeah, we can create a SQL script that will check this. Then we can show that metrics on the same dashboard as SQL load, batch activity, logs, or AOS utilizations. So to find out those correlations. So what really happened with the processing of orders in meantime when the system was working. So we can see if maybe batch jobs were running at the time. So that's why the processing of sales order was slower. Or maybe user at the same time executed some heavy report. So our metrics, they can be correlated with AOS layer, batch layer, and SQL layer. So we can show this on single report. When the processing slows down, yeah, you can immediately see whether it correlates with batch, SQL, or AOS. This is how we usually use the custom metrics. And they can be put on any type of transactions. Yeah, so posted invoices, created invoices, and things like that.
So we've talked about different ways that you investigate different kinds of problems. Can we talk about maybe the experience of actually evaluating and investigating an issue? So can you take us through perhaps a real world example of a performance issue being detected, the alerts, and the investigation?
Yeah, so a realistic scenario usually starts with the alert. So for example, let's say batch job execution time is increasing or order processing is slowing down. So we get the alert. And the alert by itself is the first advantage because we do not wait for users to report the issue. We get alerted before users even notice that. So this is the first step, and our performance monitoring allows to set up the defined alerts for different metrics. So the next step would be the dashboard analysis. Yeah, so the team can open the dashboard for the affected time window and check the correlated view across SQL, AOS, and batch. So they can see whether the slowdown happened together with higher SQL load, batch pressure, or maybe AOS memory or CPU workload. So then comes the drill down. By using log analytics and KQL, then team can move from the dashboard into the underlying data and then see which query was running too long, yeah, or how often the query was executed, how long it took, whether it was blocked, or maybe it was the server issue was involved, what batch activity was running at the same time as well. So we do this kind of analysis. Also, we need to check if issue was isolated or maybe reoccurring by the time. So we do this kind of analysis. And once the root cause is identified, then the fix, of course, depends on the case. There might be different solutions created, like query index optimization, maybe batch scheduling adjustments. Yeah, if we know that two batch jobs, they cannot run at the same time. Change the configuration, maybe code corrections, this kind of fixes we do as well. Or the option is also to escalate to Microsoft or partner, this time with evidence, because everything from Performance Monitor can be exported. So of course, depends on the fix we implement it. And then after the fix, we can use the same dashboards, the same KQL queries to compare what changed and what is the behavior before and after. And without monitor, it would be way harder to do because the key difference is in measurement. Yeah, with performance monitoring, we can measure things. So traditional troubleshooting often takes days because the team first needs to reproduce the issue, collect logs, compare separate tools, align between different teams. Even in worst case scenario, they need to clone production environment, which takes the time. With performance monitoring, this whole diagnosis can be done with single session because all the metrics are gathered continuously and they can be displayed on single dashboard, on single view. So this is usually how our cycle would look like. Yeah, so identification, fix, and then verification after the fix.
So for a customer, an F&O customer, perhaps who has never used structured performance monitoring before, what does the onboarding process look like? What can they expect to start to see if they did use it?
Yeah, when we talk about onboarding, the key is to keep the approach practical, focus easy to adopt. Yeah, so we are trying to focus on those factors. In general, we offer two paths. First path is the product-only option, and the other path is product enhanced with dedicated services. So it depends which path customer takes. The onboarding looks a bit different, With the product-only approach, we provide all necessary instructions, training to help customer get started with application. And application, once it is installed, it begins immediately collecting the data. So from the first day, from day one, without any additional effort, we gather first metrics. So the next step for customer is to start thinking about own custom metrics and alerting thresholds. So customer can think about their transactions, their business cases that are critical for them, and create custom metrics for that. So this typically involves preparation of SQL scripts to reflect specific business needs or technical priorities. So with this in place, they can begin analyzing their production environment based on real measurements gathered day by day. So usually the process stops providing the trainings and helping customer to create custom metrics and alerting thresholds. On the other hand, with dedicated services, the onboarding path is more guided and structured. So after installation, we move into performance analysis, or we can say audit phase. So we do not start with monitoring everything, of course, but we start with defining what matters the most. So which processes are critical, where users usually feel the performance issues, which batch jobs are sensitive, and what time windows are most relevant for analysis. So once we gather this, together with customer, we can review those requirements and then dive into the data collected by the monitoring. So we look for inefficiencies, blocked operations, opportunities for improvements, whether it is in AOS, SQL, or batch. We are trying to not just observing the system, but identify areas where the optimization can bring the value. So then audit concludes with the report that summarize all the findings and provides clear recommendations for performance optimization. So with this product and service, we do the whole analytical part on our side, and we provide reports with optimization recommendation.
Well, Pavel, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for taking us through so many elements of what the performance monitoring solution is all about. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we conclude?
Yeah, thank you as well. The only thing that I can recommend is please visit our website. You can find more materials about our products. Of course, there is a contact form to us. So if there are any questions regarding the performance monitor and other products, feel free to contact us. Yeah, and I would highly recommend you to take place in our partner event that will be held 16th of June this year. On our website, you can find out the form to register for that event. We will speak about every product that we have on that day, and performance monitor is also part of it. So if you want to see this, we got this event 16th of June. You can register on our website.
All right. We'll be sure to include a list of resources for our listeners in the show notes as well. Pavel, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Pavel for joining me today. And this message from XPLUS. If you're curious to know how their approach works in your environment, you can book a 30-minute call with their D365 performance team. Just visit xplusglobal.com/book a demo. There's a link in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.